Hi, I'm Sachi Parker. You may remember me as Dr. Tava from Star Trek: The Next Generation, and you are listening to Trek Untold.
Hello and welcome to Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars. I'm your host, Matthew Kaplowitz. Regular listeners of the Trek Untold podcast know that these episodes can often get pretty serious, and they're not just always about Star Trek. This week is definitely one of those shows that gets super heavy, but I think it's also a really important one to listen to. This week on the show, our guest is Sachi Parker, and to some of our older guests, that name might sound very familiar, because you probably already know the name due to her lineage. Her mother is Hollywood actress Shirley MacLaine, and her father is Steve Parker. And Sachi's childhood, and even her being a young adult, was very much thrust into the spotlight due to her very famous parents. And more so, really, due to the fact that she had a very public falling out with her mother. So much so that she even wrote a book about it. But as we're going to learn today, Sachi's life is not dictated or defined by her relationship with her mother or her father, and she's now at a point where she can live her life very much for herself and the things that she wants to accomplish. Sachi's performing career has very much crossed paths with some big-name Hollywood performers in some big-budget films. But really, as I was talking to Sachi, the story kind of unfolded more so about her relationship with her mother, and how these things kind of tie together into her life and who she is, and more so just, again, going back to how she's come to terms with all these very difficult hardships, especially dealing with these hardships under the public eye, and where she is today and who she has become today. Sachi's Star Trek connection comes to us in the form of the Season 4 episode of The Next Generation, which is titled First Contact, which, as you know, has nothing to do with the movie. It's a separate episode entirely, and the episode features Commander Riker being basically discovered on this planet that is just about to reach warp technology, and the Federation is deciding whether or not to make first contact with them. But unfortunately, Riker gets stranded there, and he is discovered to, well, not be a member of that planet. Sachi's role was Dr. Tava, and we see her right away in the very first act of the episode as well. So she has some really interesting memories about her time on Star Trek, as well as about many other things that she's done. But as you know, Trek Untold always goes far beyond the stars, and that means a lot of different things. And this week, we're having a very, very deep and very intimate discussion with Sachi about the places she's been mentally and how she's gotten herself from one place, which was a place of anger, let's say, from when she originally wrote her book about her relationship with her mother, to where she is today. And I keep saying that because it's a very much different person, and as I was doing my initial research for Sachi, I was watching different things that she was in, various shows that she appeared in, but it was also constantly showing up on my feed that I'd see things on Google or see things on YouTube where people were saying some things about her relationship with her mother and just constantly focusing on that. So it's very hard for this interview also to not get into that direction, which in turn is why I think it's so very important that we do talk openly about this, and Sachi truly was an open book. So the question for this interview is not so much what Sachi did on Star Trek, it's really more so about who Sachi is today and the things that she's gone through, which I think a lot of you out there could certainly relate to. In various intros I've done for other episodes of this podcast, I've said things about how candid these interviews are and things like that, but this one was a whole other level of candidness, and I gotta thank Sachi Parker. So, again, also I want to remind you listeners out there, for anybody who might be sensitive to these topics, about things like generational trauma, about relationship issues with parents or loved ones, this might be a trigger for some of you out there, so just take that with a grain of salt. At times, this episode is definitely a tough one to get through because of what we're talking about, but there is certainly a light at the end of the tunnel, and I think that's really the message here for what we're going to get out of this episode. But before we start talking to this week's guest, I want to remind you guys to make sure you are following Trek Untold on all forms of social media. You can check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all at Trek Untold, and that's one word, Trek Untold, no spaces in between. That's the best way to stay up to date on who our guests are for the week, learn all about them before the show begins, and check out all the random memes I post, because yeah, I do a lot of that too. If you're in a position to financially support the show, please consider becoming a Patreon member. Head over to patreon.com/trekuntold to see all the different ways you can help financially at different contribution levels. Some of the perks include early access to the episodes, having the chance to ask guests questions, and hopefully some more stuff that I'm going to figure out pretty soon. It is easily the best way to directly connect with me, as well as to meet other fans of this show. If you're looking to buy some Trek Untold merchandise, don't worry, that's going to be coming very soon. If you prefer to check out the video version of this podcast, head over to youtube.com/nerdnewstoday, where every Sunday I post these episodes in video format, which includes a lot of images and video from the guests that we're talking to. But the most important thing you can do to help support this show is please leave us ratings and reviews if you're checking us out on iTunes, on Spotify, or other audio platforms that allow you to leave reviews and ratings, or by subscribing to our YouTube channel, as well as giving our Trek Untold videos thumbs up, likes, and comments. All these interactions help push our podcast to the very top of these different platforms to make sure more Star Trek fans can find us. It costs you nothing to do other than a few moments of your time, so please, if you haven't done that already, consider doing so. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and beam up this week's guest. Computer, access interview file. And welcome back to Trek Untold, and now joining us on the other side of the screen is a performer who has probably done more time travel movies than any other guest that we've spoken to yet on this show, which is pretty crazy. It's a pretty surprising thing to have here, but yeah, we're going to talk all about some of her time travel exploits, as well as her time on Star Trek, and as always, much, much more. And that person we're speaking to is Sachi Parker. Sachi, welcome to Trek Untold. How are you today?
Hi, everybody on Trek Untold. Nice to be on planet Earth.
At least for the time being. That's where we're going to stay.
Or maybe not. I don't know.
No one knows. This is Zoom. I don't know where you could be right now.
Exactly, right? Yeah, exactly. It's a secret.
Yes. So yeah, let's just go ahead and jump right into things here. And Sachi, I'd like to ask you the question I always start these interviews with here. And I know yours, I'm actually really interested to hear because your experience growing up is a little bit different from most people, and especially where you grew up. So, spoiler alert, but so my question is, what's your earliest memory of Star Trek? Did you watch it as a kid growing up?
Gosh, Matthew, I did not. I grew up in Japan, where there was not much going on as far as that goes. I don't think they were dubbing Star Trek at the time. They were dubbing other things. Gosh, Bonanza and stuff like that, the Westerns. No, my first experience with Star Trek was when I moved to America when I was 25, so way late. And I loved it, of course. It's kind of an escape,
Yeah, absolutely. What's not to love? And now I'm just curious about hearing how Bonanza sounds in Japanese. That's got to be something.
Oh, honestly, it was normal for me to hear all these wonderful American shows spoken in Japanese, and I loved it. I didn't think anything. It wasn't out of the ordinary. And so when I saw Bonanza for the first time, when I saw reruns and stuff, or the Honeymooners, or in actual English, it was odd.
All right, so Sachi, this next question, I feel like, this is typically a very innocent kind of question about your background, but I feel like today it's a little bit more loaded here. So you already mentioned where you grew up, and that's in Japan, but for folks who don't know the name, can you tell us who your parents were and what they did, and what little Sachi wanted to be when she grew up?
Oh, well, my mother is the very iconic actress, Shirley MacLaine, and my father, who's not with us anymore, was a producer and a film producer. And I grew up with him and his mistress in Tokyo, in Japan. And I always wanted to be somewhat of a caretaker, whether it was a nurse or as I got older, working for the UN. I had my languages. Helping people, that was always something I wanted to do. I never really got that opportunity, but acting was something that I did choose when I came to this country, and I got to know my mother very well. And I think that helps satisfy my wanting to help people, moving people with the stories that I might tell through the heart. I love comedy as well, making them laugh, But there's a quality of caretaking that's very much a part of my life, even now, I love that. I love taking care of animals and people who are in need, and I volunteer all the time and stuff like that. So
that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So Sachi, I think you're one of the first guests we've spoken to who is a native of Japan, and it's a very different kind of culture than what I'm used to in America. I've had the chance to visit just once in my life, and I'm hoping to go back once all this COVID stuff is gone. But you're growing up in Japan. This is some time ago here, so I'm curious, how are foreigners treated, and especially as you got older. I think this might be a thing that could be a little tough to talk about, but being a female foreigner growing up in Japan.
What a great question. I grew up in Japan when the things have changed a lot now regarding women and working women. Thank goodness, really. When I was still there, though, there was a very traditional way of living your life as a woman, to be uh, always in the background, subservient uh, to men in general, being the mother, very traditional, maybe a little bit of the 50s in this country, in America, very in the background. And I think as a foreigner, it's funny. It was around 7 or 8 years old where it started to change, Matthew, where I was part of the community in my own age group, very much Japanese. I only spoke Japanese. And then suddenly at around 7 or 8, they noticed people know the people, kids 7 or 8 years old would notice, I have blonde hair or a bigger nose or taller or freckles. And I started getting teased. It's funny, I didn't experience that beforehand. So there's something, I'd like to study that a little more. Why is it? What is it about the human mind, the curiosity of a 7 or 8 year old that switches around that age to notice differences? It was really interesting. I lost a lot of friends and painful stuff, but it wasn't their fault. It's just something I'd like to know more about, study a little bit.
You have to
Yes,
kind of
the other thing
wonder.
I wonder. Yeah,
You have
I
to kind of
wonder
wonder,
about that.
sometimes how it's like maybe they reach a certain age, or a child reaches a certain age where they can now kind of comprehend the reality that's around them, and they're also now
Yeah.
absorbing a lot of the biases and information that they're given, and where they get it from is their home or places like that. So you got to wonder, like, at what age are they now kind of like accepting all this information as fact and not quite ready to kind of delve into that and what these facts mean?
Exactly. It's fascinating. And it needs to be forgiven too. It's just a stage of life, I think.
Yeah.
We all go through, I wonder. And it speaks to just being different. And maybe we can learn from that, of how we can teach maybe the 7 or 8 year olds just in the world in general to be inclusive, to include rather than fear the difference, or to, as parents or teachers in school, maybe can help us children of 7 or 8 years old to be more aware and forgiving and inclusive and all like that, just so that we don't go to war so much. Anyway, I'm
Wouldn't that
getting
be nice?
very, very philosophical now.
Oh, this is Trek Untold. We barely talk about Trek here. Get used to this.
Okay.
Now, you wrote a book a few years back called Lucky Me, My Life with and Without My Mom, Shirley MacLaine, and I do have some more pointed questions about your relationship with your mother that I want to come back to, especially as you
Cool.
become a working professional in acting. But, talking about right now in these formative years for Sachi Parker, what was your relationship like with your parents? What was it like growing up in Japan and kind of just being this outsider, this foreigner who's trying to find her place in the world?
I found a lot of solace in nature, and even since I've found a lot of peace just walking through woods or by a river, or whatever nature there was. Yeah, I didn't have much of a relationship with my mother or my father. I did with various teachers at school, nannies that I grew up with, all like that. But I think, and they had a wonderful influence on me in as any kind of person who's taking care of you would. And my father had a wonderful influence on me, and so did my mother, but less so because they weren't there on a daily basis. But nature, I had my favorite cherry tree in the backyard. you know, there was a koi pond, and I would make friends with the koi. And I spoke a lot with animals, still do. I speak to trees.
I mean,
okay.
as weird as it might
Um,
sound, I mean, I know I pretty much know exactly what you mean, and I'm actually just thinking now back, like when I went to Japan, and I remember
yeah.
I just basically I had a JR rail pass, so I basically just take it one day and just go as
Oh,
far
that's
as it could take me.
great.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so there was one day where I went to Kamakuras, and I remember just like I had no plans there. I just
that's
walked.
beautiful there.
Yeah, it was just really beautiful, and I think it's I can't remember the name, but it's this kind of old temple that's there, and I think it actually is a temple meant for elderly people. And there's this like giant amount of steps you have to get to the very top of the temple and to pray. And I just remember like seeing this really nice little pond, and just kind of feeling this like moment of stillness and serenity and tranquility, but also this thoughtfulness. And it's like so much is happening, but there's also at the same time quietude. So I mean, I guess Japan is like the perfect place to kind of have that feeling.
I really was lucky to have that growing up. I really did. I mean, even in the middle of Tokyo, maybe not so much anymore, but I think there are pockets even now. But back then, I mean, there it was everywhere. You know, little pockets of those little ponds and little cherry tree hanging over it, and you know, gosh. And when you're a kid, everything is bigger anyway. I just, you know, I loved all the beauty there. And I find beauty here in my way. You know, I do take time out during the day, no matter how busy I am, to find that nature. You know, it's great. I mean, Central Park, for instance. I mean, my gosh, there are just gorgeous little fairy tale land pockets everywhere. You know,
Yes, that's true.
I do. I find a lot of peace. Yeah, and quietude.
Now, if I recall, I don't think after whatever I guess the equivalent of high school would be in Japan, I don't think you went to college at that point. So can you kind of tell us what you did once you were kind of age to have a little bit more freedom and control of your own life?
Yeah, I always wanted to go to college, but I did not have the opportunity, and I'm actually going to start really soon at
Oh,
this age.
congrats.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to it a lot. Um, I'm going to study psychology, which I'm really excited about.
That seems fitting.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah, yeah. I just did things to basically survive, you know, waitressing, and I became a stewardess or an airline flight attendant, I guess is what it's called, what you're called now. I had a ball. I really did. I did that for, gosh, almost 6 years, almost seven, I think, in Australia for Qantas Airlines. Loved it. Loved going to different countries, and we would go to Singapore, Bahrain, you know, of course, Frankfurt and Amsterdam, London, and all like that, and Rome. But places like Singapore, Bahrain really stand out, or Bangkok, you know, where we would land, and we would have so much time off, sometimes 4 days, and I would just take a bus and go out into the country and go visit local people and how they lived, and oh gosh, play with the kids and stay with, you know, back in the day you could do that kind of thing where you would stay with different families, you know, and it was safe still. Or little tiny inns, you know. And I would get to know the innkeeper and his wife and his kids, and I would learn how to cook their food. And um, even though didn't speak the language, you know, you find a way. Um, just the beauty of getting out into the non-touristy areas, into the real life of you know, for instance, Malaysia. If we were in Singapore, you know, I'd really go far out. And I never was late for my call for the next flight out. You know, thank goodness. But Bahrain, same thing. Gosh, gorgeous beauty. You know, the desert, the sandstorms. You know, going out to the areas where they dry dates, you know, the camels. I mean, it just I loved that. I always felt the need to get out and get to know the real um, the culture, you know, and food and the people. And I could never really learn their language, which I wish I could have done, but you know, never had enough time. But I loved all that, so I kind of miss it. You know, I mean, hard work being a stewardess, an airline, a flight attendant. stories I could tell you about being in flight. Boy, fun.
That's a different
Fast and
podcast, I
Furious
think.
stories, you know? Oh my God. But yeah, I had a really good time. And then I finally came to this country at 25 to get to know my mother, really. I missed her. So, and then that segued into acting. And
So let's say at this point in the story of Sachi Parker's life, you've arrived now at 25 years old. You're in LA, I assume, with your mom. And at some point, how does acting actually fit into this?
it was really kind of an interesting thing where she's the one actually who got me into it in the first place. We were playing a wonderful little game across the kitchen counter, I guess. Um, and I said something like, life is so strange. And she said, oh my God, say it again. So I did, like a second take, you know. Oh, life is so strange. Anyway, she said, oh my God, okay, let's do some improv games. Anyway, we played some improv games. I didn't know what she was carrying on about. Anyway, I
Just hitting you with the
finally,
Meisner technique.
I guess so, right? And I started having so much fun. Um, that's how it started. And then she introduced me to Peggy Feury, who was this wonderful acting teacher down the road in Malibu, and literally walked me down the beach to Peggy Feury's house. And that's how it started. Very grateful for that. I love acting. I really do.
Was there like a formal education at that point with acting, or is it kind of more just like acting as you go, figuring out as you go along, and you're getting roles?
No, it was quite formal actually with Peggy. I, uh, I loved her, and she was so generous with me. Yeah, I was teaching Japanese people at the time. You know, the Japanese culture was very big in Los Angeles, and I was teaching English to a lot of Japanese businessmen actually at the time, and that's what I did, and learning how to act with Peggy, and I was with Peggy in her class along with Sean Penn and Charlie Sheen and Angelica Houston, Michelle Pfeiffer. I mean, it goes on. Kristen Glover. Oh my gosh, uh, was wonderful people, and I learned a lot. I learned almost everything I know, and my mother too. She was wonderful in directing. You know, little scenes that we had to prepare for class. You know, I would bring it back to her place in Malibu, and she would direct them, you know, with my scene partner. It was really fun.
I'm gonna put you on the spot now, Sachi. I'm gonna ask you here. I
Oh,
think this might be the toughest one, toughest question in the entire interview now. But let's just say,
ooh.
especially in these formative years where you're now learning how to act, you're picking up all these different tools from your mom and from Peggy. Some real greats we're talking about here.
Yeah.
What were some of the most important lessons that you learned from both of them that you continue to use throughout your career?
Wow. Well, I learned from my mother how to be tough and professional. I think I learned that in Japan anyhow, as far as, you know, being on time and being professional and always showing up no matter how you feel. If you're even if you got 105 fever, you show up, you know. Um, that I learned in Japan. In Japan, of course, the Japanese are very much that way. I think the Germans, you know, it's a cultural thing. Um, and my mother, because she's very much that way, very, very professional, and it's a respect thing, you know. I learned, I think Peggy, and from her husband Bill Traylor, who's no longer with us. Of course, Peggy's no longer with us either, but I don't know how, and I still don't know how. But Peggy taught me how to act, and I don't know how I do it. But uh, it wasn't, and I'd like to learn the lingo that goes along with how I do it. You know, I know I use the method a lot, a lot, but my imagination as well, as far as um, creating a real surrounding. I can actually when you're doing a scene. I don't know if you act. Do you act?
I should, but no,
Well,
not.
you should. It's or you'll get it. It's a not to be so technical about it, but I definitely have a natural ability to somehow create a completely real surrounding for myself where I actually see, I could be in a room, but let's say, you know, or you're on stage, but you're supposed to be out in nature. I can actually smell nature. I can smell the grass. I can see the pond. I can see the sun reflecting off of it. I mean, all my sensory is operating. I might have learned that from Bill, her husband, who taught that sense memory. But I think I also have a natural ability to do it also, which I'm very, very lucky. And I use it all. I use my background, my own personal pain from childhood. Very lucky there. I think we all are. We have all had painful pasts, different stories to tell. And I do find that it has to be about 10 years old. In other words, the pain can't have happened yesterday and expect it to work today. For me anyway, I need about 10 years of marinating time. and, and then when I go back to it for a scene, it really works. Or, it could be Peggy taught me a lot about, and Geraldine Page taught me a lot about this as well. I did my first film with Geraldine Page in Ireland called Riders to the Sea. She taught me a lot about, go to the museums and look at artwork, what might work for you and your past or your memories, or a certain necklace that means a lot to you. She had a bag of goodies, a bag of little trinkets that she would pull out for different scenarios that she needed. And to this day, I still study, not study so much, but it's like brushing my teeth. I'll sit there in a chair by myself for about 5-10 minutes per day, whether I'm acting in a paid job or not, just to keep my wheels oiled. I'll give myself an assignment, like, oh, okay, uh, give myself a scenario that maybe, okay, let's make it an easy one. Like, I need to cry because of a loss of someone dear to me. And I'll give myself literally a time limit, because sometimes a director will say, okay, we need you to cry on cue on this line, or in this particular scene, maybe not on a line, and so I'm always ready. And I do give myself about 5-10 minutes a day to do that. And sometimes I find the bag of trinkets, the bag of little goodies, some things have stopped working. And then I'll have to, that's dangerous. I better find another one to take its place. And so then it gives me an opportunity to do that as well, like changing parts, and switching them out. And so I do work on it every single day.
I mean, I know you were just saying how you didn't necessarily have words for what you're doing, but I mean, it sounds like you got a lot, and I'd like to actually kind of explore
Oh,
that a little bit. That's not a bad thing either, but I feel like we're kind of trying to feel our way through this process of how you were learning how to act, and I guess I kind of want to explore that a little bit deeper because I was thinking about how I saw an interview that you did a while ago. I think it's also in your book too, how you wrote about, especially as you were growing up, feeling very isolated and very lonely, and how in a lot of ways too you didn't necessarily have a lot of the escapism that, let's say, the average kid my age would have had back then. Like I think I heard that your dad didn't let you read books necessarily back then.
oh God, I
So
still struggle with that. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm kind of wondering, you have like these kind of negative life experiences, and obviously that can go great towards the negative things when you're acting. But in terms of basically, the fact that you were so isolated, feeling so alone, how did you actually find out how humanity worked, and how were you able to kind of
How
build that
how how
vocabulary?
what how what worked on?
How were you
Um,
able to find out how humanity worked And how were you able to
Humanity.
find, yeah, and how were you able to kind of find like a vocabulary to act with?
Oh wow. Yeah, I feel um instantly. Someone can walk in a room and my instincts are right on. It's a funny thing,
Very
and I don't know
intuitive.
why. Very intuitive, and I don't know why. And as an adult, I started checking, asking that person, or even in a joking kind of way, if I don't know them very well, or oh, do you want a cookie, to brighten up your mood, or or can I give you a little, someone I know might know better. Can I give you a little shoulder rub? You seem a little down today, and I would check in, and I was always right. And so I started to then really trust my instincts a lot, and they're very valuable, because a lot of times people around us deny our instincts or gaslighting or whatever, for whatever reason, and I think that has been a gift for me to check in. I don't check in as much anymore. I don't have to be as rude necessarily to ask anymore. I just internalize what that other person might be feeling, not thinking necessarily. I don't know, but um, I think we all have that, uh, and yeah, as far as the loneliness thing goes, hmm, I think we all feel it. I know I still do. Um, and in a way, I didn't realize it at the time when I was a child, but these last few years with COVID, being stuck, and the loneliness really, and I think for a lot of people has come into play in their lives. It kind of you or I have anyway taken that as a gift or made it a positive, because loneliness is such a it's scary, and it you do feel isolated, and you do this COVID time, and um to kind of go in and really try to evaluate life and your friends and what we really want to do, and those questions that we don't get a chance to really ask ourselves in private because we're so busy, and I'm trying to turn that loneliness into a real positive, and I think I've done an okay job these last 2 years. I feel I have, which is where the college thing came in, and I'm like, you know what, I might be 65, but you know what, it's never too late, I can do this.
Yeah,
Stuff
I think
like
COVID
that.
in
And
particular really kind of pushed people to get out of their comfort zones and force them to do things like
yeah,
like you mentioned now. I mean, like that's kind of how this podcast started too. It was my pandemic project and also a way to like talk to people again. So I can definitely
there you
understand that.
go.
That kind of that's
Well
a whole
done.
trauma this whole country has felt really.
Well done, Matthew. Wow, you really acted on it. See, I have yet to act on it. Well, I have. I kind of drove up to Norwalk Community College, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah, you put that application paper and you did it. So there you go.
yeah, I did it. I did it. I'm like, okay, and seniors get to go for free. So I'm
Oh,
like,
lucky
okay,
you, right?
I had to turn 65 first. So yeah, yeah. So but they were still doing things online, and I'm just not an online person. I'm a people person. I need to be able to ask questions, raise my hand. I need, I need hugs. I need to go out for coffee after class, blah, 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 all that. So I'm going to wait until it's all in person again, which is hopefully September. But anyway, yeah, the loneliness thing is a toughie, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have communed with nature a lot more. I would go camping by myself with my dogs. I have two little dog. Well, you'll meet them. The one's a little Papillon and another one's a pug. I mean, they're not exactly, guard dogs or anything. But they're pals, and yeah, I've gone camping with them and fishing. My dad gave me an appreciation for the outdoors and camping and fishing in a river, and I love that. And I do, and this COVID thing has made me do that a lot more. Um, One time I saw a mama bear and her three cubs. That was scary. Whew. Yeah, but I think nature. Honestly, I keep going back to nature, but that is a real solace. No time for loneliness, really, or the negative part of loneliness. Um, so I'm glad for that. I'm glad I have those tools, to to combat the negative part of loneliness.
Okay, good answer. Yeah, I could totally feel that. Yeah, I know what you mean by that entirely. Um,
Yeah, I'm glad you get it. I'm trying to put it into words because it's and cooking. Oh, I love to cook. And oh my God, Matthew, I cannot wait to have friends over again and cook. Oh my God, I do miss this. I cook and I'll like, you know, give it to my dogs.
lucky dogs, jeez.
Yeah, they're lucky, but I don't know. Sometimes I don't know if it's okay for a dog to eat. Like, I
As long
don't
as
know.
it's not chocolate, you're okay, I think.
I think so.
Yeah,
Chocolate, we know. Yeah.
save that for me.
So,
So,
yeah. You have dogs?
no, I don't, but I do like chocolate, so feel free to send me all that if you got it.
Oh, I will. Okay, I will actually. I make a killer chocolate chip cookie. Oof.
So let's kind of talk now about some of your earlier acting gigs. And I'm curious, because you mentioned that film that you did in Ireland. I don't know if that was your first acting gig, so I guess the question here would
It,
be, what was your very first pro acting gig, and what did you learn from it?
well, that was my first acting gig with
Okay.
Geraldine Page and Amanda Plummer. I was 25, and wow, what an experience. It was beautiful there. First of all, it was shot on the Aran Islands, which are three islands off the west coast of Ireland: Inishir, Inishmore, and Inishman.
You say that
They
so well.
still speak. I know, right? I'm very proud. They still, well, I don't know if they do now, but they did back then still speak Gaelic. So I did learn a bit of Gaelic then. Beautiful. We all each stayed in different homes, different families, because they didn't have a B&B or an inn or anything. All the film crew stayed with different families. It was lovely. I just was so lucky. I mean, I think we all were, honestly. I mean, it was an experience. It really was, and it put us all into it, we actors. It all put us into the right mindset of playing the roles, because it was taking place when J.M. Singh wrote it. Uh, he also wrote Playboy of the Western World. I don't know, you might know that more. Wonderful writer. Very melodramatic story of the women in the family losing all of the males to the storms that would come pounding up against the land. And I mean, it was just in their little currachs, they're called. They would go out and go fishing, and we women would uh, knit these Aran sweaters. I'm sure you've heard of the Aran sweaters, the woolen sweaters.
Okay, yeah, yep.
Um, and each sweater had its own stitch. that was the signature of that particular, of the father or the brother or the, and so the reason was when if they were to not make it and they were washed ashore or the sweaters would wash ashore, they would know who didn't because of the stitch in the sweater. I mean, very melodramatic stuff. But in any case, the mornings were all foggy and just gorgeous and wild and woolly and oh, I loved all that nature again, and I would get up, God, so early and go walk around the island, literally. I mean, it would take maybe an hour to walk around the island, and every morning, and then the what was her name? Noreen, I think was her name, or Maureen. She would bake black bread every morning, and I learned how to do that, and these big pats of butter, just it was lovely. Oh golly, and we would just sit. It was freezing, and even it was done. It was shot in the midsummer, but it was freezing in the summers, early in the morning like that. And we would sit by the stove. She would have this stove, and she would have a kettle on the stove all day long for tea. Um, and she would uh, make me a hot bath in the morning to get. She wanted my muscles to be all loose for shooting that day. And she would, but there was no hot water, and everything was generator run. No electricity, but except for the generator, and but the hot water would become hot. She would put coals into the base of the tub area and light the coals and fill the bathtub with freezing water, and that water would eventually become hot from the coals. I mean, wow. Just that. I loved all that.
Different way of life.
Yeah, right? And then she would bring me this cup of tea while I was in the tub. Oh, I mean, it's something I still do in the morning. Yeah, and working with Geraldine Page and Amanda Plummer, wow, two wonderful actresses. Geraldine Page was so, so generous, even when it was her, um, or my close up and she was behind the camera. Usually, a star like that, they would have somebody else read me my lines when it's my close up, and they'd be in the dressing room or something and in their trailer or whatever. No, no, she would be right behind the camera and give me her all in her performance so that I could have the most in my emotional response to her line. So generous that way and so professional.
Yeah, that is a pretty huge deal, especially when that is your first film to have like that kind of literal feedback face to face with that person.
You know what I'm saying, right? I mean, it was, yeah, most stars, and she's a star,
Yeah.
and she didn't have to do that. Same with Amanda Plummer, same thing. Just wonderful. We three women really worked well together. And Barry McGovern was my brother, and very Irish. Love a wonderful person, lovely crew. Oh God, Ronan O'Leary directed it. Just a wonderful guy, fabulous director. Um, what a wonderful experience for my first. I got spoiled. It was so so family-y, and oh, we would go to the pub at night. After the day of shooting, we would all go to the local pub. There was only one pub, and everybody would gather there, and we'd all have their local whiskey. I mean, I remember having uh, the local whiskey there. You don't mess around. I mean, one shot, and I was like, I fell off my chair. I'm gone. It was lovely. It really was. And you'd hear the different stories and lovely experience. Oh, my daughter's name is Erin because of it.
Oh well, there you go.
Yeah, yeah,
That's really
yeah.
cool. Let's
Yeah.
fast forward a few years now, and we're going to start talking about, I guess, the time traveling exploits of Sachi Parker because we got to talk a little bit about Back to the Future. And you were, IMDb lists you as bystander number one, but I mean that
I was
doesn't really do
like,
you justice. But because basically, that scene itself, just to tell people what it is it's right towards the end of the film after George McFly punches out Biff, and you and your date run right behind Michael J. Fox. You get to deliver a line. So that must have just been, really fun shoot. I'd love to hear about your time working on that set.
oh, Matthew, listen, it was so much fun. I mean, it was an honor. I had a crush on Michael J. Fox, as did everybody. All the girls. I mean, we're like, oh, there he is, there he is. I mean, it was just one of those things. I mean, and what a wonderful production too. It was. Love the storyline. Again, so friendly. Everybody was so friendly. Um, I mean, I think I had I mean, literally, what, 2 lines?
It was 2 lines, yep.
LinkedIn, you'd miss me. But honestly, my experience of that thing, oh, it was a big budget too. And we got to wear lovely outfits of the 50s, right? And oh, we were all treated like princesses. It was just, and very, very, Michael J. Fox, very friendly. Most stars aren't very friendly. They're not friendly to the bystander ones of the world. I mean, they're just, they have better things to do. But such a lovely guy. So lovely. And years later, Matthew, it's funny. Years later, uh, I went with my children and my then husband to Atlantis. That Atlantis place. Where is it? The where you go when you have fun with your kids and it's all the rides and everything. And there was Michael J. Fox with his kids. And I said hi. He remembered me.
Wow.
And I mean, I didn't expect, and such a gentleman, just lovely. And that was kind of cool. A real nice person.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny though because they basically reshot that scene for Back to the Future Part Two, but you're not there. So I'm wondering, like, were you ever called back to that? Was just a conflict, or what happened there? Why didn't we get to see you again in Back to the Future Part Two?
I don't know. Bystander number one went off to the Pleiades or something. I don't know. Yeah, bystander number one had better things to do out there in the universe. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you did because basically you went on to do another movie that involved some more time travel, and that's Peggy Sue Got Married, which,
Oh my gosh, you're right. How weird is that, right?
right? Yeah.
What
So, and
is
that's
that?
again, talking about another big budget movie, and this has got Francis Ford Coppola is directing this. We're talking about Kathleen Turner, Nick Cage, Trekkies out there will know Catherine Hicks, of course, because she was in Star Trek 4. And we've got Jim Carrey for crying out loud. I mean,
Oh
and
my
even
gosh,
a really young
right?
Helen Hunt in this. Like what a cast.
Oh,
So yeah, but again,
uh,
you're time traveling once again, another film. So what is it like there to be again in another era, if you will?
well, honestly, that film, I mean, Peggy Sue Got Married. Wow, Francis Ford Coppola influence was huge, huge. It was in a time in my career life, whatever, where I was starting to take a big interest in behind the scenes, how you make a film, not just acting. And I wish I'd gone further with that. That would have been, um, and I think I still can. I mean, of course, it's never too late. These iPhones, for goodness sakes. I mean, we can shoot a film on them. But yeah, Francis Ford Coppola, what a genius. I remember there was one scene where um, Helen Hunt's character was going back through time, and it was very complicated. And he sat in his, what do you call those? Those silver, yeah, an RV thing. But it was insane inside. I mean, I got a chance to see it. It was just cameras everywhere and high tech stuff everywhere. And he basically lived in that. And he would come out every now and then to direct, and then he'd go right back. But he had this fancy way of shooting that thing that was so genius. And and so detailed, and he wasn't satisfied until it was absolutely perfect. The dedication. I mean, of course, it takes a lot of money to be able to do take after take after take after take, but even so, the the level of perfection. Yeah, he was very much an actor's director and a technical director, and I learned a lot from him. A lot. Wonderful man. Wonderful man. I got to know Sophia a little bit, um, who's now, of course, unbelievable. She, in her own right, she's doing so well. But yeah, that was a lovely experience. Again, huge production.
Oh yeah,
Those,
and we're
those
gonna go.
huge productions just don't come around, and I don't think they're in existence much anymore.
Not
Those
quite the same way.
those huge budgets. Yeah.
And we're gonna basically kind of keep things in line with the time travel because I think this film is more or less got some time travel elements in it, and that's Scrooged. And again, we're talking about big movies, big budgets. I mean, this
Oh
is
my
Richard Donner, so again, you got
God,
some more film royalty here. And I believe
I
you were
forgot
Belle, right?
about
So
that one.
yeah, so you were like one of the cast members, right, in Bill Murray's cast, correct?
Yes, I played his fiancee, Belle. Yes, I had to kiss Buddy Hackett.
Well,
Sorry.
I think the question is whether or not he was drinking before then.
Whether he was what?
Whether or not he was drinking before then.
Oh God, I'm glad you mentioned it. I didn't.
I do the dirty work for you. Don't worry, Sachi. I got you covered.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I want to stay a lady.
I mean, were you
Uh,
there for that big speech that Bill does at the end of the film?
oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's
I've heard
fantastic.
there's all this like rumor and innuendo about how much that was improv, how much that was scripted. I mean, maybe you can kind of shed some light on it. I mean, how much of it do you remember being like him just talking?
A lot.
Yeah.
Because it was
Okay.
different. It was different almost every take.
Hmm.
And I mean, I don't know which take was, scripted. I mean, completely. I'm sure it was. He's such a genius improver, right? I mean, the guy
Yeah.
is just. He has sort of a Robin Williams kind of ability to just go off, and it's brilliant every single time. And which one do you take? Which one do you use? I mean, he's one of those. Just brilliant. I mean, just
Yeah. Undeniable.
a really nice guy too.
That's good to hear. 'Cause I think this was like his first movie in a few years too. At the time, I think he'd done
Oh,
another movie
really?
before then, didn't do that well, and he just was like, I'm out of Hollywood for a while. And then he came back and he did Scrooge, and that was like kind of the big comeback of Bill Murray.
I didn't realize that. Well, he nailed it. I mean, he really did. I mean, I loved it.
Yeah.
Again, another huge production. You know.
Absolutely, yeah. So you do have one other sci-fi franchise under your belt that I want to talk about. And this is kind of fun getting to watch this one again, because you did an episode of Alien Nation, and this is like going back into I think it was the early '90s on Fox, and you were in an episode. And again, this show is relevant to us Trekkies out there because it has Gary Graham and Eric Pierpoint, who you got to do scenes with in your episode 15 minutes or 15 Minute Wanda. And those guys were both on Star Trek a bunch of times, a bunch of different versions of Star Trek. So yeah, I'd love to hear if you remember anything from that, and in particular, anything about the prosthetics you had to wear, because that was
Oh my gosh, you're taking me back. Well, I had forgotten about that. Yeah, the
forgotten or
prosthetic.
repressed that one, because that's a weird one.
Yeah, that was right. I remember the prosthetics. That was, oh, we were in the makeup chair early in the morning, 3 hours. You know, uh, gosh, yeah, that was really something. Um, I remember the prosthetics on that one, and also on Star Trek, playing Doctor, what's her name?
Dr. Tava,
Tava.
we'll get to her in a bit,
Tava,
yeah.
whatever. But yeah, very sort of claustrophobic actually, because you've got all this. Um, yeah, I loved getting out of it at the end of the day. I remember there was this guy. I can't remember. I can't tell you the name. I, can't, I had a huge crush on him during Alien Nation, and I, yeah, uh, one of the writers, and my God, he only saw me with the prosthetic on, and he didn't know what I really looked like. And I remember being in the makeup chair after the shoot one day, and he's standing right there just to see what Sachi Parker really looks like underneath all of that. And I was beyond embarrassed. I thought he wouldn't like me or approve of what my real face looked like. And I wanted to keep the prosthetic on that day. I wanted to go home with it, and I was so insecure about my real looks underneath, because I didn't have any, it was just the real face, not any mascara or shadow or lipstick or anything it was, I remember that. Anyway, that was something personal, but yeah, I did, and he was okay.
Yeah, I imagine that can't be too pleasant, because you got to probably stuff, I imagine, all your hair under this bald cap, and those bald caps are pretty huge.
Yeah, they really are, and you don't look great when you get all that stuff off, because you're red, and I have this white skin that it gets splotchy because you're taking it off. It's just like, it wasn't good. You didn't ask me out. Oh well.
Thanks, Alien Nation.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Right.
Trek Untold will return momentarily.
Trek Untold is brought to you by Triple Fiction Productions. Triple Fiction Productions produces affordable and unique 3D printed Trek-inspired products from the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and the movies. Ranging from prop replicas to use in a fan film or cosplay, to accessories or playsets for figures in all different sizes, Triple Fiction Productions has got you covered. Past pieces for toys have included large centerpieces like 10 Forward from the Enterprise D, shuttlecrafts complete with working lights, and the Voyager Bridge, with smaller pieces including Borg alcoves, the Genesis device, and the dreaded arch-enemy of Worf, barrels. All highly detailed products are 3D printed and hand-painted in the USA, with new items added all the time, while simultaneously improving their printing quality based on fan feedback. To learn more about their products, visit triple-fictionproductions.net or visit them on Facebook at facebook.com/triplefictionproductions. Want to get 10% off your next purchase? Use code UNTOLD10 at checkout to receive this discount. Not applicable during sales or clearance events. That's code UNTOLD10 to get 10% off action figure dioramas, accessories, and prop replicas. Triple Fiction Productions, taking Star Trek where no 3D printer has gone before.
Hey, I'm Licia Nav, aka Ensign Sonia Gomez from Star Trek TNG, and now Captain Sonia Gomez on lower decks with her own ship, the Archimedes. Yay! I finally got a promotion after 25 years. So anyway, I'm here to talk about drivebydogooders.org. It's a little charity I run where we go to the outskirts of Skid Row, and from our car windows we hand out basic human essentials like water, wipes, Coldstream cheese, socks, tarps, masks, t-shirts, things to keep people warm. So we just think that everyone deserves clean water, some protein, and a way to clean themselves, especially during Corona. We also hand out masks to those who really, really need it, who live in tents on the street, mainly the disabled and elderly who have a really hard time getting to services. And we do all of this with no agenda, just pure giving, no overhead. If you'd like to go to the website and donate, it's 100% tax deductible. And if you click on the donate button, you can go right to the $35 option and pick a signed autograph picture of either the Star Trek The Next Generation or Lower Decks, or Total Recall, where I played the three-breasted mutant hooker on Mars, and that's the X-rated version. Put in the comments section your address and anything you'd like me to write, and I'll personally inscribe it and mail it off to you immediately. And again, that's drivebydogooders.org. Captain Sonia Gomez, signing off.
We now return to Trek Untold.
Now, there's one other thing, too, I want to talk about before we jump into Star Trek. One last thing here, and that's in 1986, I read that you did a commercial for Diet Pepsi with your mother. So, I was curious, was that the first time you two had worked professionally together?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
how was it? How was
It-
it acting side by side with your mom? Not just being in your home doing it, but now doing it in front of cameras and directors and producers and all these people.
Well, I tell you what, it was the one and only time, and it was so much fun. Oh my gosh. But talk about another generous one, like, Geraldine. I mean, she was really, she's a trooper. She's a real professional when it comes to, she just, gave me everything I needed, mommy, I don't know if everybody saw that, but it was a lovely commercial. It really was. There was a lot of warmth in it, and um I love that. I loved working with her.
I
Yeah.
mean, throughout your career, did you keep your parentage a secret? Did people in Hollywood know that you were the daughter? I mean, I assume it's kind of hard to like not have people know about that. But I mean, did you try to keep it a secret? And
Yeah,
did
I
it kind
did.
of, add any pressure to you as well? Like the fact that you did you feel you needed to live up to what your mom has done?
Um, I I think maybe there's that. Um, I think um I did keep it a secret. I still do. But not very well. I mean, everybody knows, and it's fine. I mean, eventually, uh, what I was going to say was I think I wanted people to get to know me for me and not be impressed because she's my mother, because she is such an icon, but just to see me for me. But honestly, I've grown out of that really. Once people get to know me for about 10 minutes, half an hour, something like that, you know, they really do get off of it and they really either like you for you or not, and I think I put that upon myself more than what was actually real. Um, yeah, I think there's a certain thing about wanting to be independent too. You want to. But I think the acting thing complicated things. Once I started acting, that really complicated things a lot. Before I started to choose to act, it was a lot easier. I probably, on that note, I probably would have been wise to do something entirely different, um, like be the nurse that I wanted to be, or Uh, but I do love acting. I really do. I am compared with her quite a bit. I look like her. My voice is like her. Um, it's just what are you gonna do? You know, I'm her daughter, but I do. Um, I probably need to work on being more myself. Um, I've actually had people pay me for jobs saying, we want, we want another Shirley MacLaine, so be her. Oh, and it's like, okay, well, need the money. I okay, and that was hard. But I know how to, I'm a good imitator, so and I am her daughter, so it was fairly easy to act like her, be like her. Um, don't know that I enjoyed it. It took me away from me.
I mean, basically, you kind of just wanted to stand on your own 2 feet, not have to be in someone else's shadow.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. On the other hand, I mean, she's an insanely talented genius actress, I mean, it's a compliment, to be asked to be like her. Um, uh, so there is that, and it's an honor. Yeah, that was a tough one for me when I was actually asked and paid to to like a younger version of Shirley MacLaine. That was very hard. I almost felt like I was insulting her too, like tried to copy her. There is only one of her. So, but what are you gonna do? But yeah, I'm good. I do my own thing now. I hope nobody else comes and asks me to be like her.
I
Because
mean,
I'll do
I
it.
think it's.
Like, you need to get paid.
I think it's pretty safe to say you have done your own thing and you've made your own name for yourself. And we were talking off camera before we started recording this, and
Yeah.
I even told you I didn't want to start beating a dead horse because you've talked about this stuff already, so in depth in your book and other places. But it's also
Yeah.
been almost 10 years since your book came out, and I imagine things are different for you too, and the way you look at things are probably different. So at the very least, I don't want to keep bringing those comparisons back, but I am kind of curious to see how things are today here in 2022 as we record this, but. We'll come back to all that. That's just kind of my my warning again about that stuff because I don't want to keep again beating the dead horse.
It's fine, Matthew. Gosh, first of all, you're so good. You're such a good interviewer. I want to
Thank you.
tell you that. You really are. You're so warm and so respectful and all. You're really good.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
And I really have nothing to hide. Um, I did write a very personal book, so I do have lots of regrets having written it. I shouldn't have, and I'm very, very regretful. Actually, I think but what's done is done.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, that was actually one of my questions was looking back on it now, this many years later, whether you regretted anything that you said or just even the fact that you wrote the book in the first place. Because, it is taking a lot of private feelings that you had and putting it out there to the world and essentially kind of using that as your therapy method. But then on the other hand, too, here you are, here's Sachi Parker, and you're kind of already in the public eye because of who your parentage is. Because of, I mean, we haven't mentioned yet that Warren Beatty is your uncle as well. So it's like you're kind of publicly out there. And ultimately, you have very little choice in this matter. I mean, you're basically a little kid and you're thrust into this world from the start. So it's just got to be a difficult thing to deal with just from day one, even.
Um, I think honestly, Matthew, I think I really have to be grateful that I was raised in Japan and not in Hollywood.
It's true, yeah.
I think it would have been a lot worse, if you can call it a bad thing. I don't know Warren very well, but I think that being raised in Japan uh, provided a safety from all of that, the Hollywood thing and the traps that um, offspring can get into. I was spared all of that. I really was, and I'm very grateful for that. Regarding any uh, certainly substance abuse or any, I mean, my God, I mean, I'm just so lucky. Even that alone, but and the Japanese were very much in love with my mother. Uh, so I did get a healthy dose of that when I was growing up, but in a very respectful kind of way, not in a Hollywoody kind of way. And it was just different. I felt, I felt special um, as a result of her being my mother, and I think um, that might be um, as an adult, you have to earn your specialness, Um, so that was a little confusing as I became an adult, earning my own way in life. And, I was given so much accolade as a child in Japan for doing nothing, just to be her daughter. Um, oh, Sa-chan, oh, Sa-chan, こっちにいらっしゃい。And it's not real, and but again, those are things that you learn as an adult, and it's all good. I do I do wish I could have more of a relationship with my mother now. I miss her terribly, and I think writing the book was a mistake I really made, a big one. I regret it terribly. But it's gosh, when you think about, I have to forgive myself a little bit of going through a divorce, and when you get, you're not in your right mind, really.
I mean, it sounds like you might have just been in a place that was very angry and kind of very dark and just didn't know what to do with
Very
those
dark,
feelings.
very. So yeah, but I did abandon it, and I'm glad I did. I chose not to go on any of the talk shows and no publicity. I really, I did a couple, and that was it. That was it. I realized how much I hurt my mother, and I didn't want to proceed with anything anymore. So
Yeah,
that was, at least I did that. But still, shouldn't have done it.
I mean, I was watching, in my prep work for this, I saw an interview that you did with Barbara Walters even, and, I feel like the person I'm talking to today is very different from the person who was doing that interview with Barbara Walters, almost 10 years ago. So I feel like you've definitely, whatever you're doing, you've definitely come a long way, and, it is
Well,
interesting too, because I imagine that, most people who are listening to the show, they have to deal with whatever baggage that their parents have put on us, and oftentimes that is a generational trauma that their parents put on them and that they still carry and hold with them. And I think the difference too is that, just again, like we said, you're more under the microscope because of who your parents were, and because of who your parents are. And it's different for everybody. But as someone who has clearly been working through all of this stuff, and you've come very far. I mean, I've only known you for an hour, but I can tell you're a completely different person than what I saw from those interviews. How does someone take this journey and transform themselves and kind of get to that light at the end of the tunnel to be in a place where they're okay with themselves, with who they are, and with who they were?
wow. Wow, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to even answer that question, because that's cool. Um, yeah, I think when you start to get older too, and I'm 65, you start to realize that, you've got kind of one chapter left, and one big chapter anyway, and you I certainly wanted to look at um, any hurts I'd caused in my life to people that I love, and to try to make it right. And you know, for closure for them, for me, for just in the name of love, really, and doing the right thing, and being able to be on my deathbed and say, okay, well, I screwed up here, 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 and here, and I really tried my best to then make it right here, 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 here. And that's really all we can do as human beings. We all screw up, and we all, oh yeah, we do. And it's what you do after, in a way, that really counts, in my view. Um, yeah, otherwise, you don't forgive yourself either, and you know you can't keep pounding yourself with guilt either. I think that's and if the person that you're trying to make right with doesn't forgive you, keep trying. Just never stop. Just never stop. At least you're doing everything you can. And that's kind of where that's what I'm learning right now in my life. And I keep making mistakes every day, right? I mean, we might say something to hurt somebody, just then you might be in a bad mood, or you might be preoccupied at a time with something else and you might say something insensitive. Whatever the case is, just apologize and do something to make them, give them a hug and chocolate chip cookie, and I don't know, but you know what I mean. I mean, that was a joke, but to really make amends however you can. That's what I'm doing, because I don't want to be on my deathbed and not have done that.
All right, well, that's going to be enough of the heavy stuff for now, Sachi, because I think I've kind of drilled you quite hard for the last half hour on this stuff here. So let's move on to what we're here for, and that is some Star Trek talk, because you were in Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 4. The episode we're talking about today is First Contact. This is a fun one. I hadn't actually watched one in a while, so yeah, it was really cool to see this again. So let's just take this one from the top here. So had you auditioned ever for Star Trek before this?
No, I had not.
First time?
It was my first time, yeah.
Do you remember what the audition process was like at all?
Gosh, I don't. I'm trying to remember, but I don't. No, I'm sorry. I don't.
It's all good. Usually people don't anyway, so it's all right. It's so long ago, but yeah, it is kind of fun to hear that this was your first audition and you nailed it, because I've talked to a lot of guests and oftentimes they've auditioned again and again and again, and then it took them years to get a part. So you got a first try. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I must have done a really great reading for outer space. I don't know.
Now, did you know, like, at the start that you were going to be auditioning for the part of someone that's going to be an alien?
Yes, I did know that.
And were you aware they were then going to have all sorts of prosthetics for you?
I wasn't sure, what extent, because I remember seeing Star Trek, as everybody watched Star Trek, The Next Generation. The prosthetics were different for a lot of the aliens. They didn't all look alike, and I wasn't sure what I was going to be looking like. I didn't know, I thought they did a great job. I really do.
I mean, to be fair, I've heard from other folks that have done this show, especially women who are portraying aliens a lot of times. And we had Patricia Tallman, and she did an alien once, and she basically said she looked like a walking vagina. That's how she felt. I don't think yours was quite that bad, though.
God. A walking vagina. Wow.
You got to see it. Yeah, if you don't know it, you got to see it. But yeah, I mean, you had some pretty heavy makeup here. You had makeup, you had a hairpiece, right? Like, what do you remember about getting through that whole process? This is a lot different from Alien Nation.
I think I remember a widow's peak they gave. I mean, it was just, and the here, lots of folds, and I mean, it was something else. I mean, it was cool. I mean, completely different. Oh, the cheekbones. I love the cheekbones they gave me. They made this high cheekbone. I don't know. I thought I looked, in a way, prettier than I do in life. I thought so. And that was Rob. Yeah. Maybe.
You had some fun gloves on, too, right? Like, those must have been horrible to work with, I'd imagine.
So which ones?
You had gloves on, too.
Oh, yeah. You're bringing me back. I forgot about the gloves. Yes, I remember that. It really helped me get in character. I mean, honestly, it was great. I loved it. But I remember the makeup artist was serious business. There were two ladies and a guy all on me. I mean, like, and 3 hours in the chair.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is pretty intense. That's definitely much more intensive than Alien Nation, wasn't it?
It was far more. Yeah. I tell you what, though, you know what was really cool, because they were all so sweet. This one was particularly a family-y kind of feeling when you got into the makeup chair. And there's something about being in the makeup chair for 3 hours and having 3 people work on only you. There's something about feeling so loved and kind of special, and it's all about you, and it's just... It's nice. I remember that feeling very well. I love that. And they were cracking jokes, and, we were having coffee and, making, weird jokes. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what kind. I remember some of the jokes, but anyway, just family-y. And we got to know each other well. You're talking about 6 days of 3 hours in a chair. You get to know these people really well, and they get to know you, and it's just becomes a family. That was a particularly wonderful family-y feeling. Shoot. Yeah.
And just kind of remind everybody about the premise too. I mean, this episode it's a first contact premise. So basically, this is a planet of aliens who have just achieved warp capabilities, and that's why the Federation's going to check them out and see if they're ready to talk and basically maybe join the Federation. So, but the fun thing about it is that even though it is outer space and it's meant to be the future, this alien race that you're playing in particular, it's kind of like they're almost in the 1990s because it's basically like that kind of world. It's just colored differently, and they got gloves on for their weird fingers.
Exactly.
So and again, we're talking about some really cool guest actors as well besides yourself. And this also has George Coe, Michael Ensign, Carolyn Seymour, George Hearn. So yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces in this episode, a lot of moving parts that I feel like not necessarily every single Trek episode has. Usually they'll have a guest star, but there's a lot of folks doing a lot of things at once. So I'm kind of curious how everybody got along, and did it just really feel like chaotic, or was it pretty focused?
Very focused, but we all were in the makeup chair together, kind of in a row in this huge trailer, and it was just, again, we got to know each other really well. And it's a funny thing, that happens on a set anyway. Usually in the makeup chair is where it starts, where you get to know someone and their families and their children and their brothers and their sisters and their husbands and wives. You get very close very quickly, and then you really don't see them again. I remember seeing Patrick Stewart in Brooklyn recently in Park Slope. And I felt like, because we got close, and I wanted to go up and hug him because from way back when, and of course I didn't. I got shy, but that feeling of getting so close to someone where you feel like you're part of their family when you're on a shoot. That was a particularly close family feeling on that shoot. Yeah.
And you also got to spend some time with Jonathan Frakes on that episode too.
He was great. Fabulous. Funny.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, that must have been fun to get a chance to work with him, and the fact that you get to work that close to him too.
Yeah. He's great. Yeah. I miss these people, I miss them. It's been years, but you remember things. I can't say, but you remember things about them, in the makeup chair, for goodness sakes,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Now, this episode's also known for the appearance of another guest star, which was Bebe Neuwirth, and she played like the thirstiest alien ever. She's Linnell, and she basically demands that Riker make love to her before she helps him escape, and she convinces him to do that pretty easily. It doesn't take much convincing to get Riker to do something like that, but it's a really funny scene. I was wondering if you were actually there that day when they filmed it.
I don't remember that. No, I don't remember that. No.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely curious. One day I got to try to find a way to get her on the show, because that's a scene.
Bebe Neuwirth, what a great personality. Wow. She's a big personality lady, and she's done so well for herself too. I liked her a lot. Funny. A lot of sarcasm, very funny. Oh my gosh. I was still struggling at the time with getting to know American humor. From my Japanese cultural background, which is pretty much, I was going to say no humor, but the Japanese
kind of
humor is, pardon me?
It's just a different kind of humor, yeah. It's like kind of like the same difference with British humor too. It's like sometimes it's more dry, or other times it's a lot more wacky than you get in America. So yeah, it's like different kind of language.
It is, and I remember exactly. I remember she was a classic example of the American humor, the sarcastic, hilarious, and I was still getting used to it at the time. I was still confused. What? But then it would take me about an hour, and then I'd get it, and I would start laughing. So it was a time in my life where I was still getting used to the American, humor, which is very much sarcastic. You know what I mean, right? I don't think the British or the Japanese have the sarcastic thing going on much. So it was, and I had only known Japan and England, and Australia, of course, but
Now, we talked earlier about how you had some interest in things that are like were behind the scenes, and especially things like directing. But again, you're also here with this big cast of characters, not just the main cast of like Patrick Stewart, Marina Sirtis, Jonathan Frakes, but these other really great guest stars too. So, did you get a chance to kind of like watch them work and pick up any things as well for yourself?
um, I'm trying to understand. Gosh, I loved the fact that they were so full of personality and humor and craziness in the makeup chair, and then would just become in character on the set, a complete flipperoo. And that was the beginning, really, of my acting, and I learned a lot about that.
I mean, do you
Yeah,
feel like that was like a turning point for your career doing that episode of Star Trek?
maybe it was. I think it was. First of all, you don't see the actual person, their faces, right, as much, because of all the makeup and stuff. But I think it was the beginning of me understanding, oh, okay, even without makeup, to become a character, you can still look like you, but really not seem like you at all if you could just go into another person completely. And that was fascinating to me.
So being in the makeup kind of helped you, I guess, almost like step out of your own body to find this character. Is that kind of like what is that an interpretation of what you're saying?
I think so. I think that was very much easier because you can hide behind the prosthetic, the makeup. So what do you do when you don't have that? And you're not hiding physically. You have to go into character, maybe even more, even more of a commitment to getting into someone else's shoes. Yeah. On a completely serious note, but in a way, yeah, that was an eye opener for me. I remember putting two and two together that way. I thought, oh, okay, well, the makeup's all fine and dandy, but how do you get in character without it? And that was the true test of being an actor.
Yeah. Now, do you recall if you watched that episode on TV when it first aired?
I didn't want to.
Are you one of
Uh,
those persons who doesn't like to really watch their own work?
I do now. At the time I didn't. I was still new, and I didn't want to. You know.
Have you seen it since then? I guess is the question. Have
I
you ever watched
haven't.
it?
I haven't.
Oh my God!
And
Oh
I
wow!
want
Okay.
to. And I want to. I don't know where I can.
Oh, it's
Do
on.
you have?
I got yeah. It's on Paramount Plus. It's in a few places. I'll hook you up after the show. We'll figure something out. Yeah, I'll
Well,
make sure you see
okay,
it.
help me. I would love to. Gosh, yeah, that would be fun. No, I love to watch myself now. Now I've I've grown up, and it's different. And I'm not um, a beauty lady, so I don't care about how I look. I just care about how I'm acting. And am I in character or not? Or I'm hard on myself that way rather than looking at. I mean, a lot of actress friends of mine they're just, oh, that wrinkle. Oh no, I have to go get Botox. And I'm just not. I don't care.
So let's kind of fast forward to today now, here at 2022. So what has Sachi Parker been up to since her Star Trek days and everything else? So, there's so many other things we didn't talk about, but, what are you doing these days? Are you still performing? Are you doing other things now? Besides going to
I
college, we should preface.
Yay. Yes, I am still performing. I do a lot of theater, mainly. I've done a lot of Zoom acting,
Case
and
in point.
right, I know. Interestingly enough, I got used to Zoom. In the beginning, it was very, very, very difficult. But it's kind of like film acting with, the close up, just the face, the body you're like a talking head, really. I'm done with it though now. I'm really eager. I'm doing a play coming up, starting rehearsals in 10 days, and I'm looking forward to that. in person again. And I'm always going to be acting. I just love it too much. I'm real lucky. I keep getting people who call and say, "Hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that?" I don't quite understand why people. I don't have to do much. I get calls. So yes, my wheels are well oiled, very, and it feels almost as if, now that I've raised my children and they came out of the oven really well baked, they're good to go, they're doing their lives, and I'm so proud of them. And, you know, there's a time in probably every mother's life where your children are done and now you've got to get back to you, and that's where I'm at. And it's a lovely place. There's a lovely freedom. I don't have a responsibility on a daily basis anyway to make sure they're all right and fed, and the daily stuff of raising children. Mine are now the dogs. Okay, well, that's easy. I mean, um and it's just uh doing what I need to do for the rest of my. What does Sachi want for the rest of her life and this one precious life? And because as a mother, you do give up what you want and need for your children, right? I mean, that's just how it is. And so in a way, it's new because I'm an older mom. I didn't have my children until 42. And so it's only recent. And so I say, even though I'm 65, I started having children so late that being single without a husband and without children, I'm really in a wonderful place in a way to uh, live out my dreams and my passion. And what are those? And then going forth, gotta go for it. And it's better than when I was in life before children, before a husband, because I'm older and wiser, and um, I understand so much more now. So I feel very grateful that I have this one last chapter opportunity to do that. And it's yeah, I feel extremely grateful and blessed. And I have my children behind me supporting me emotionally. And that's another wonderful thing that I never had when I was young, you know. And so it gives you even more of a boost. And it's also a way to, um, I have a daughter, I have a son and a daughter, to show my daughter that, as a woman, because I'll be dead and gone by the time she's 65, and it's never too late. You just keep at it, man. You gotta, and keep your identity, to show her as a woman that that's important, even when you're married and even when you're a mother. And I think I made, a mistake in a way, not, uh, what am I trying to say? I mean, listen, we can all go back and doubt ourselves and question, second guess, whatever. But I'm glad I gave myself 100% to my children. But I think there's also a balance. Um, I kept acting throughout it, but not as much as I should have. Um, but whatever. I I'm glad I did it that way. Now I'm uh, need to do my life, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
I feel like in a way, yeah, I want to give that to her. That I don't want to retire and be put out to pasture or put myself out to pasture. That's just BS. I mean, there is no such thing,
Yeah.
You
I mean, it
gotta,
seems like you've kind of like really found who you are right now at this point in your life more than you have previously, right? I mean, that's kind of what you're saying. I feel like is like you now know who Sachi Parker is, and you're still learning more about her, but you're kind of comfortable right now with who you are, and that's kind of a big
yeah,
thing too, though.
so cool. It's so cool because of the years that I have under my belt, right, and experience and all that. Um, put that to use with what I don't know what I'm going to be really doing. Who knows? I mean, I always act. I love acting. I just love it. I love moving people. I love making them think. And I love getting into character. I love it. I love not being me. I mean, I don't even know who I am half the time. But I mean, I think that acting will always be a part of my life. And yeah, I still need to get out of the shadow of my mother, that whole thing. Um, and I think I will as I get older and older. I'll grow that way too, continue. But yeah, I want to learn about other things too, like college. Yeah. And I want to be a grandma and I want to be all those things. So anyway,
Well,
yeah.
not to completely bring this back to focusing on your mom again, but this is actually I mentioned earlier this interview I watched of you with Barbara Walters, and in it there's something that you said, and I wanted to kind of talk to you about that now and see what your thoughts are about it today. And the quote that I have here is that you said, "I saw my mother suppress her own creativity. I wasn't going to let that happen to me." So I'd like to know what that mean. I'd like to know what that means,
I
and
said that?
I believe so. Yeah.
No, no, no. That was my mother saying that about her mother.
Okay. Okay. So then, uh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna twist
No,
that
my
back around then, I
mother,
guess.
no, yeah, no, my mother has never suppressed her creativity. I mean
Okay. Yeah. So I'm wondering then, in this case, we talked about generational trauma, a little bit a while ago too.
yeah.
I'm wondering, is this something that you felt as well with your life?
Yes, I think so. What an amazing question. Gosh. So thank you. I I have felt that I suppressed my own creativity to allow my mother to stay on the pedestal
Hmm.
and not jiggle her by being on another pedestal or so I think I wanted to keep quiet for a long time in order to give her that. Um, and I don't want to do that anymore. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. What are you, a psych? You're like very, I need to pay you like thousands of dollars or something.
I'm just a Trekkie. I'm just doing my thing.
Woo! Okay.
Well, let me throw you one last
Interesting.
heavy one here. This will be basically, as we're
Okay.
coming towards the end of this interview here. This will be the last real heavy one. So, what would you say would be the most valuable piece of advice that you ever got from someone, either about acting or about life, or maybe even both those things together?
When I was 12 years old, um, there was a lady by the name of Rita Hall, uh, who was a very, it was like an auntie, an older auntie that I got to know when she lived in Hong Kong. Anyway, I was off to boarding school at Victoria Station in London. She was seeing me off. She was the one who saw me off. And she said to me, "Don't ever gossip." I was going to an all girls boarding school. in England. And she said, don't ever gossip. And I haven't. And I think that was a real piece of valuable advice that I got from her, and I've never forgotten it. And another one was from the headmaster of my boarding school in England that I happened to graduate from, Anthony Green. And I remember he told all of us, it was a very small school, kind of, I don't know if you've ever heard of Summerhill in England.
I think I
You
have.
have?
I think I have
Oh
for
my
some
God.
reason. I don't know why.
Oh,
Don't ask me why, but I think I have.
insane. I mean, not very many people have. Wow. He started the school very much after the Summerhill kind of style. Anyway, a very small, kid directed school. But anyway, he advised all of us, he would talk to us about how we needed to organize our home life, our personal lives at home. Make your bed every morning. Keep yourself and your home clean and organized, and you will have a happy life. And I thought to myself, at the time, I didn't really understand. I make my bed, who cares? I mean, I just, okay. But now, of keeping things straight, keeping the calendar straight, keeping, calling back, uh, communication, keeping all of those things tidy in your life, not to the point of obsession or anything, but just it makes your life, it opens doors and windows and opportunities. It's so to keep your home life, eat well, exercise, keep yourself healthy. That it, first, and then from there, you'll it life just sort of falls into place and it works. He was so right. I guess I'm trying to think of, I haven't thought about any of this. My goodness. Um, yeah, I think lots of people, but yeah, I think my mother in she's very disciplined, and to stay disciplined in your professional life.
Good advice. I've heard that
Discipline.
from a lot of people too. It's similar things, basically just being regimented, getting on to your basically taking care of yourself, taking care of within before you take care of without.
Thank you for making it so easy to say. I took forever. You said it. There you go. That's it. In a nutshell. Done. That's exactly right.
Your way sounded much nicer though.
Oh. Thank you. Might be a feminine versus a masculine kind of thing.
I don't know. I'm just like,
talk
this
a
is it.
lot.
Bleh.
Oh, yeah. That's funny.
All right, so Sachi, thank you so much for this really, interesting conversation we've had today. It's a very unique conversation for sure. But yeah, as we wrap things up here, I got to ask you, like I started this interview with a question I always ask my guests first. This is what I always like to ask my guests lastly. What is the best thing about being a part of the Star Trek universe?
Oh, wow. The best thing is an escape from our planet. I would have to say. Yeah, let's make it all happen and make it real.
I think we all want that for sure. Have you ever done any Star Trek conventions, by the way?
No, I haven't. I'd love to.
Yeah, we got to get that to happen. Have you ever done any of the conventions at all, or have you kind of just stayed away from that scene?
No, I don't stay away from it actively. I just haven't been asked. I'd love it.
Okay, we got to make that happen.
Yeah,
I talked to too many
make
guests
it
in the show
happen.
who, like, they've done some amazing stuff. They've never gone to a Trek convention. And I know folks would love to meet you, and even the smallest roles out there, people, Trekkies especially, we love to meet all these folks who are such a big part of the universe. So we got to find a way to get
Oh,
you to a Star Trek mission out in Vegas or something like that. We got to find a way, folks.
yes, yes, yes.
All
Love
right,
it.
well,
Yeah.
Well, Sachi, again, thank you so much. Again, I really want to just really make sure I get this clear here is that, you've been so open, so honest, talk about a lot of very, very tough subjects. I don't think this is what you expected when you came on to do a Star Trek podcast, and most people don't expect that kind of questions from a Star Trek podcast. So thank you for being really generous and just so open about all of this. And, like I said earlier, I mean what I said. I feel like I'm talking to such a different person from what I saw years ago, and it sounds like you've done a lot to, get yourself to this point, and, you've done an awesome job of doing it, and I look forward to hearing about your graduation from college soon with your psychology degree.
R2, sweetie. Thank you so much, Matthew. You're wonderful. I really loved talking with you, and you're just wonderful at what you do. Just brilliant, actually. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and we got to get you to Star Trek convention again. I'm going to really stress that point. So everybody out there, let's make it happen. Start petitioning.
Thank you. I love it. Take care, everybody.
That's it for this week's episode of Trek Untold, and thank you for checking it out. One more time, if you're not following us on social media, please do so by checking us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Trek Untold, and that's all one word, no spaces, on any of those platforms. If you want to check out the video version of this podcast to see our guests, head over to youtube.com/nerdnewstoday, where I post the video version of this show every Sunday after the initial episode airs on Thursdays. Shout out to our sponsor, Triple Fiction Productions, who create 3D printed toys and prop replicas inspired by Star Trek. Their items come in all shapes and all sizes and are always amazing. If you're in a position to financially support Trek Untold, please consider heading over to patreon.com/trekuntold to become one of our Patreon supporters. There's a lot of cool perks that you can get by becoming a Patreon supporter, including early access to the episodes, the ability to ask our guests questions, and a lot more cool stuff coming very soon. Please consider leaving a rating and review on iTunes or any other audio platforms that you listen to the show on that allow you to do so. Or if you're one of our YouTube audience members, please make sure you comment on this video and give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Special thanks to Scott Ray for providing us with this week's guest. If you'd like to book them for an autograph signing or convention appearance, email Scott at scottray67@aol.com. Until next time, I'm Matthew Kaplowitz. This has been Trek Untold, and remember, fortune favors the bold.
Trek Untold is sponsored by TrekSphere.com, promoting fan-produced Star Trek content in all forms, is powered by the RageWorks podcasting network, and is affiliated with Nerd News Today.